Hello and welcome to the 123rd episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad and I am joined via phone by my weird brother, Rob.
Ain't this particular?
Yeah, this is one of the strangest episodes we've recorded, not for you, the audience.
I know. If all goes well, it'll sound just the same way any other show sounds, but...
Proceed as if everything is going very normally.
Proceeding.
What's happening here is we're having a pretty insane day, Rob and I today. We're starting recording this at 11:23 p.m. on the day, like the night that I'm supposed to be uploading. So if this episode is delayed, we apologize. But we're using phone technology now. I'm literally holding a phone to my head, and I've got a mic pointed at my mouth, a Rock Band mic.
Me too. These Rock Band mics, they work.
They do. And normally you're the only one with that and I have a headset, but today I got to go ghetto with it because I cannot plug a USB headset into my Droid. That would not fit.
That'd be awesome, you know.
Yeah, so starting off here, we've got a couple things life-wise to take care of. One is that you said you forgot Mother's Day last week.
Well, I didn't forget it, but I forgot to talk about, like, the story.
Yeah, it's something involving Durian that you wanted me to mention real quick.
Aha! Let me tell you, for Mother's Day, I was with my girlfriend's family. So what we ended up doing was going to Chinatown in New York City. Like, so this is like the Chinatown from, 80s folklore. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, and by the way, for everybody, this is going to be basically a live episode in the sense that we have no time to edit this. So this is going to be raw dog podcast. Excuse our mistakes.
Raw dog cast in the pod.
Excuse our dust.
Yeah.
But, yeah, durian is a like a Thai or an Asian fruit. Excuse me.
It's a fruit
that my wife has actually tasted in Thailand. So I was wondering where the Asian part came in.
Right, we were in Chinatown and ate really good food at a restaurant there, like where they were literally like shucking the corn or whatever it is, like right next to you as you're eating. Like they're getting that stuff fresh, And the guy was even funny. He's like, Japanese lobster imported today from New Jersey.
Yeah, I had a guy once say, soy sauce, Japanese ketchup. And it's like, I'm aware of soy sauce. Thank you, though. They had to dumb it down. But yeah.
But this guy was hilarious because he was kind of admitting that none of it was really Japanese because it's all just from the local stuff. But it's like, all right, exactly. It was great. But while we were walking around, we started to notice these giant spiky fruits hanging in baskets, like everywhere.
Right.
So we decided to get it. It is called Durian. And it was $8, and we thought this will be fun.
Oh, I feel bad for you.
This will be fun. It looks like a melon. It looked like it was some sort of watermelon, grapefruit, maybe. It honestly kind of resembles a deformed pineapple.
Yeah, and let's face it. Like at this age, there's not that many things that you haven't tried.
Yeah. So we took it back and we opened it, and trying to figure out what to do to prepare this, we go online only to discover the reason why you've never heard of this fruit or this vegetable or whatever is because in many hotels, markets, even subway stations, this is banned because of its intense aroma.
Right. Try to describe the smell here, would you? Like paint an aromatic picture for the audience, because I've only heard it described.
I have the perfect description brought to you by the show Bizarre Foods.
Okay, let's do it.
Onions mixed with stinky feet.
Oh, okay. That's pretty bad.
Oh, God. It smelled like a plum from outside the rind before we opened it.
Yeah.
But inside, it is a extremely starchy odor. It's almost like body odor.
There's so many ways you can describe these bad smells. I remember my friend Jason saying that his dorm in college smelled like unwashed foreskin, which is a pretty descriptive term, and but it evokes immediate thoughts. There's also a smashed open pumpkin with bourbon poured on it was invoked at one point.
Later on, Sarah and I were watching Bizarre Foods, and the guy, like, he eats anything. He eats beetles. He eats, dung. He eats deer parts that should not ever be consumed. But and he's fine with it. Like he'll eat it and he'll be like, it's a very earthy flavor. I love this. Like just he's always positive about everything except
Right.
for when somebody snuck him a smoothie with durian in it. Like he tasted, he's like, oh, there's durian in that. Like he immediately knew what it was because
even the dung eater is disgusted by it.
Exactly. This guy he would probably eat like a dung ball rolled by a dung beetle.
Dung ball. That's how they're sold. Is it dung balls and donuts? Oh my god.
Jelly-filled dung balls.
By the way, I have to say, these people that eat insects, to the people who do this, I will say, I will not eat an insect until we are living underground and the sun has been irradiated and is burned out, and it's like Fallout 3, like, but in real life.
And there's some meat on that insect.
And until every other food is gone. Because the thing is, there is still food here that is not insects. We don't have to eat them, you know. Some people go after them, but that's the last resort to me.
Yeah. And I think that's in the end is what durian is, because I was thinking about like these stories about Koreans who just like suck it down like it's vanilla pudding, and
right.
Like that's how they describe it. And I'm just like, no.
In betwixt StarCraft matches,
I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, Gok is best when served live.
Right? Yeah. It's a Star Trek episode with terrible Klingon acting. That reference Gok is best when served live,
and we all know that.
Yeah.
But the thing that occurred to me is I'm like, all right, if I'm just starving in a third world country or, you know, whatever, I'm the ancient ancestors of these Koreans and hungry, and I come across this fruit that is filled with starch and protein and stuff. It's like a giant potato that's also kind of sweet.
Right.
I wouldn't care if it was a little footy tasting.
A little onion footy, yeah.
Exactly. I'd dive in. So, like, you know, I can see why this caught on.
So there you go. That's your Mother's Day story, I guess?
Yeah, because that was, you know, and it infused the house. The next day, I was at work sitting, and I think I was wearing the same jacket.
Right.
And I could smell, like, the durian, like, in the jacket. Like, I wasn't even, like, near it, and it was, like, the smell just permeated everything.
Like when you leave a smoker house, you know?
Yeah, or, you know, like Bath and Body Works.
Right, exactly. So at this point, the audience is now wondering, what is this episode about? It's not about durian, I promise.
Yeah.
Rob and I decided we would probably do a all-news episode this week, just because of the nature of things. He's been running around like crazy with his apartment. I was trying to buy a car today, which I finally did get a Mazda 3, so that was nice. It took a while to...
Congratulations.
Thank you, lover. No, just kidding. I don't know. But yeah, so let's move on to some news here. We're just going to rapid-fire go through some things that happened this week and happened today, especially... One reason why we pushed this episode so late was Google's I.O. event just ended like mere hours ago. Well, earlier this afternoon. And we wanted to wait to get all that news. And I will say it was worth it because Wednesday was pretty boring. But Thursday was exciting. Today, when we're recording this, was exciting. There was a lot of good stuff. And I'll just break it down. Why don't we talk about this first?
All right.
Okay. So day one was a lot of stuff about HTML5. Google is basically, if you haven't already guessed, trying to build applications for the web. This is part of what they see as, you know, cloud-based web applications is really their focus. And they're doing this, I think, better than a lot of other companies, that they understand that the cloud, you know, quote-unquote, is where things are headed. And they pointed out that applications right now on the web are not the same as desktop applications. I mean, we all know this. And HTML5 is the thing that they see taking that a step further. So they showed a lot of things that you could do with HTML5, which for those who don't know is the next web standard. It's going to be built into all the next browsers, and so it'll take a while for it to actually be like widely, you know, received. But these are things people can develop right now to get this going. And one of them is like dragging and dropping a file off your desktop into a Gmail. Or running a full like 3D game that would utilize your GPU in the browser. Again, we're talking about strictly web applications.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing about HTML5 is really it's designing itself to sort of blur the line between the computer and the internet. The big thing being that the internet websites will now have greater access to your system's resources.
Yeah.
I mean, Flash was basically designed because people were like, okay, why can't these internet sites use my GPU? Why can't it use all this stuff that's on my computer? Right. It's very restricted to like plain text and things like that. So HTML5 is going to be this thing that like it's going to be almost indistinguishable now.
Yeah.
You know, what a browser-based game can do, because that browser-based game has all the same access to everything on your computer that a thing installed on your computer has.
And this conference was weird in that respect, because most of what they're talking about is not even available yet, you know? But they're trying to get the ball rolling.
And it's cool. You know, I always like gazing into the future ball and being
well, that's what's exciting about this whole, I mean, about listening to what Google's doing in general, is you do feel like you're getting a sneak peek at the future. And I tweeted that this event really, for me, was like a new WWDC, you know, Apple's big event. Because Google is really positioning themselves, you know, in competition with Apple, and a lot of excitement at this. It's really funny. They gave everyone who registered for the conference like Sprint EVO 4G phones, and I'm just like, dang, Google, you know?
Oh man, I love that phone.
I know. Well, you will love it when it comes out, but yeah.
I actually tweeted about that phone because I think it's kind of competitive and ironic how it's named the Evo.
Right.
Because it uses WiMAX 4G, and it's the other 4G technology is long-term evolution.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like they're kind of trying to already pull the trick you game where they're like, oh yeah, it's the Evo, you know, evolution.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it's just one of like, you know, 50 or so Android devices that are out there, and you know, anyway,
but it's
we'll
the
get
first
to that.
4G one for Sprint, and it's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, and that was really day 2. It was devoted to the Android. But before we get to day 2, I want to real quickly finish up day 1 about this HTML5 thing. On the subject of web apps, they introduced a Google Web Apps Store. It's basically called Chrome Web Store. And what this would be is an easy way for you to buy apps, a.k.a. the thing you're already used to on your phone, but for the web, for the browser.
Essentially for your computer, this is something that I think the average computer user now finds themselves envious of with their own phones. Is there aren't these specialized apps that do just like one unique thing, or that are very unique in their functionality. You know, instead it's like, well, I got to open up Word and like make this, and so much is running online anyway. Like.
Yeah, well,
I honestly use my phone for so much more than I use my computer for, and I think that this is Google saying, "Hey, you know, like the technology is there. Let's handle apps in this new kind of slick way."
Yeah, it's awesome. The desktop is learning from the phone, because the phone is a new platform and it's had to be designed with simplicity in mind. So it never had those hang-ups about like the legacy of what it used to be like. It's a strictly new device, you know.
Right.
So yeah, App Store, Apple being the best, the App Store is so easy to navigate and just buy an app and install it instantly. When you look at what you go through on the PC, it's totally different, you know. So they're trying to change that. And again, this is browser-based applications. So once you get them, Chrome, the new version of Chrome will actually have a tab. Your new tab page will just have a lot of large icons of your apps. And you can install them very easily, and they'll, now this is not a Chrome thing. Google is very big on open, so Firefox and Opera and everything will still be able to use this web store. But Chrome users will get a little bump, so that's kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and it's something I know Google's serious about, is pushing us in this browser department, so that in the whole web department, so that we can actually get on there and do everything on the web. It's really the ultimate goal, you know.
I mean, it makes Chrome OS all the more like viable, that. Now you have apps for it. Now you have programs running within the web, within Chrome, and it's gonna just be like flip that switch, and you don't even need Windows now. You don't need Mac OS 10.
Well, and that's the thing. They are going to eventually...
Everything you want will be in the browser anyway, so why not just have the browser?
Well, yeah, and I think that's where they would like to eventually go. the good thing is that it won't rule out Firefox or Opera. I mean, Firefox, Mozilla was there, Opera's guy was there, so they were running some of their demos on Macs. I found it a very, very interesting and kind of diverse, funky kind of conference, because even the slides in the PowerPoint were very kind of like not, well organized. Like they didn't look identical to each other like the Apple one. It wasn't all pristine. And they have all these, icons on the screen of behind the guy of these androids that are growing and shrinking and fattening and widening of different colors. And I sort of started to get it. Like Google is really trying to say, look, you do it your way. Like, you develop your own Android phone. You create, put this stuff on your own platform however you want, and we'll get into that more using Google tools at the core, I guess.
It's brilliant. I mean, well, I think it's the open argument about like, look,
Right.
just get yourself out there in as many permutations as possible, and
Right.
business will come to you.
Yeah.
Like the more Google's philosophy is, the more people they can get online, the better. It doesn't matter if it's for
Right.
free or if it's not tightly controlled by them or anything. It's like,
Right.
if we get people online, our business model will prosper.
Yeah, it's almost the perfect storm because they make their money in advertising, like 98% or whatever in advertising.
Right.
So they don't really care as much about what the hardware is, and they're even pimping the Droid Incredible now on their own website. They're like, don't buy the Nexus One, get the Droid Incredible. That just shows they're not tied to platforms. Oh, and why don't we transition into that? So day 2 was all about Android, and as an Android user, that's exciting to me, but it really felt like the new Apple show, because much of what they were showing was these insane features that you would expect Steve Jobs to say, but I want to get the guy's name here right. It's Vic Gundotra is the guy that was leading the main keynotes there, and he just did an awesome job. A lot of people said that they felt like he is a great person to be at the forefront of Google. Whenever he was off the stage, people tended to be kind of bummed out, and the demos didn't go as smoothly. By the way, several demos didn't work. And he had just, smoothly would say, okay, well, that's not working right now, and let's move to the next thing. There wasn't any weird embarrassment or, awkwardness.
Yeah,
It was just
yelling,
okay, yeah.
edit autoexec.bat.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was just completely like, hey, this is what happens, and we're going to move on to the next thing. And they did have so many things. So anyway, Android, they mostly talked about Froyo. He pronounced it Froyo, which some people called him on, I guess. But yeah, it's Android 2.2. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to bore people here. I mean, it's going to be a lot faster. It's going to have a lot faster browsing and everything. They mentioned that the App Store is up to 50,000 apps now, and they're just kind of pimping out, all the cool features, cool little features that'll please Android users. But I think one thing of interest, maybe more broadly to our audience, is that they develop technology in here which is cloud to device technology, which I don't think any other device is really as serious about this cloud stuff as Google is, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Essentially, you can on your browser, on Google Maps, on your computer, like your Mac or whatever, click send to phone, and your phone instantly opens the Google Map page.
Wow.
You could download an app on your browser from the online version of Android Marketplace, and then say just download, and it appears on your phone. Basically, it's interoperability between the phone and the browser.
Yeah, because when everything's happening online or in the cloud, it's not, about as much making it compatible. It's just, here's this window to look at the cloud, and here's this window.
Right.
Anything you change in there, is going to be changed for the other device. That's
Yeah.
awesome in a lot of ways.
I know,
Yeah.
it seems so obvious, but it's something that, especially Apple, they took tiny jabs at Apple without being too arrogant, and they said, there are some devices that require you to tether in order to get your music on there, but we've discovered something called the internet, and it was like, everyone laughed. But it was
It's called a
know
door.
what? Yeah.
Sorry. Old Steve Jobs, his we found a great way to get into our computers. It's called a door. Next thing you know, he reveals the cube, hardest thing to open. Anyways.
Well, Apple, when it comes to the cloud-based stuff, is a little more clueless, it seems like. They only integrate it when they absolutely need to. And with Google, it's like cloud. Everything has to be cloud. And sometimes it's like, all right, that's getting overboard. But check this out: the music system they introduced whenever they were knocking the whole tethering thing was they said just go to the music store of your choice, click buy song, and they demoed this with a generic music store. I assume people have to use this. Like I said, it's not out yet. But it certainly could be. And you would choose buy song, and then they showed the phone downloading it immediately.
Oh, so like he was doing this on the computer, but then it appeared on the phone.
Yeah, he was buying the song on not iTunes, but like a web music store, and people clapped at that. But the next thing was kind of cool too. It was your own iTunes library at home. You can stream it directly to the phone. Like you don't need your music. Yeah, you don't need your music library. You just basically, it's just, once again, it's like using the internet for everything you possibly can instead of having to tether your device with a wire.
Right. I mean, this is awesome. Like, I remember back whenever the 360 unveiled that it was going to have wireless controllers. And I always thought it was kind of pretentious when, like, Jay Allard was showing it off, like, behind the doors, and he was talking about, like, the guy reporting, who basically works for Microsoft, said, well, Jay Allard was immediately complaining because the controllers he was using to show had wires, and he's like, oh man, I feel so like tethered down by these wires. And I thought it was just this sort of like marketing thing. But these days, like I don't want to use wires.
Right.
Like, I try to avoid it whenever I can. I mean, even the fact that I have like my phone, like this microphone plugged into the computer with a wire, I'm like, what is this crap?
And that's like I'm sitting here with a wire so close to my face, and it is like super frustrating. It's just the idea of being able to get stuff from anywhere, and that's the goal,
I tell you what would be awesome, like, if you had this sort of Natal thing set up where, like, you just hold up the microphone to the computer and it's like, oh, that's the microphone you wish to use? Okay, connecting.
Right.
Like,
any feature that's only available in one place, the way that Gizmodo said it was, this kind of idea has an expiration date. You can sense it's coming, that kind of thinking is going out. And it's going to be replaced with this, which is basically, why would you ever want to be connected like that ever again once you have the ability to wirelessly sync, In fact, you can jailbreak your iPhone right now and get a Wi-Fi syncing app that lets you just sync wirelessly. And it's like, why wouldn't Apple do this? Like, just out of the gate, you have to jailbreak it to do it. But, like, just let us wirelessly sync these things. I mean, that's not even a great solution because you still have to be near the computer. But, ultimately, let everyone sync it in the cloud, but it's like, for now, at least give us Wi-Fi syncing. But no, it's like.
And I saw that like RCA was even working on like wireless charging back at CES. Like, you don't even have to connect your phone to anything; just be near a Wi-Fi signal, and it charges your phone.
Yeah.
But that's a long ways off. So ultimately, this sounds like a pretty cool show, though. I mean, were there any like? I guess the big question was there any like iPad competitors? Was the Android tablet on hand at all?
That's what I was really hoping for. And I think NVIDIA was there to show off their Tegra chipset, which is in tablets, or it's meant to be in these Android tablets. Mm-hmm. And so you can watch some YouTube videos of people touching this mock-up Tegra tablet, which is running some pretty good-looking games. It's supposedly a better chip than the A4 that's in the iPad, which, coming from NVIDIA, it's obviously a very good graphics chip.
Yeah,
but
I believe it.
The tablet was a little thicker, and it had USB. It was kind of like the stuff you expect from the PC knockoff.
Right, they're like, all of the legacy, it has a 3.5-inch floppy drive.
Yeah, it gives you a ton more, but it's not as elegant. This is not representative of Android tablets, but for those who don't know, there are Android tablets being announced by Verizon and through Samsung, I think, is making one, and there's one other, I think Motorola or somebody else is making the other one. But expect to see these, of course, to compete with the iPad and stuff. But they actually used iPads a few times during this Google I/O show, and that's one thing we should probably talk about is the weirdness between Google and Apple lately. I mean, like I said, they were very subtle about it, but at the same time, they were still pretty bullish on this whole, if you're not open and you're not in the cloud, then you're going the wrong direction. And they pointed out at one point, especially when Flash came up, because Flash is going to be integrated into Froyo, they were saying, this is such a better option than just saying no. Like, working with Adobe on this, Vic Gondara said, it turns out that people on the internet use Flash, and it was like, big applause.
Oh boy.
There's things like that were definitely sort of targeted towards Apple.
Yeah, I saw that they unveiled like a video standard or something that competes with Apple's supposedly open HD video standard, but this is more open. Like,
that they introduced a web form. I'm skipping a lot of the semi-boring stuff, but they introduced
but I'm saying like they were firing some direct shots at Apple.
Yeah,
maybe it's like more of a philosophical thing than it is like a competitive thing, because ultimately if Apple sells more web-enabled devices, once again Google's business model can absorb that.
Exactly. I said, they showed Chrome running on a Mac, whenever they were doing their Chrome demos. So they're not kicking.
Yeah, so I don't think they want to be like, let's pull Chrome from Apple. Same way we pulled out of China. Like, it's not going to be like that.
Yeah, and obviously Android will never run on an iPhone, so that's probably their strictest competition. But, that's where Apple's been getting a lot of flack lately, just from, I read tech blogs, so, excuse me, that from my perspective, the tech blog world is just on fire lately about this Flash thing and the way Apple's been acting lately. And somebody brought up something in a blog recently about how Apple was becoming the man that they once, in that 1985, that famous commercial, they once made fun of. And Google took that and ran with it, because at the conference they showed that when they talked about Android being open and being able to be on any device, and this is a good point, I think, is that if anybody wants to make a crazy Android device, you can. And if you think about that, it means every carrier, every type of possible shape, any kind of keyboard, any kind of megapixel camera. Like, if you want to have, if you want to have a freaky physical keyboard, you just can. If you want to revamp the interface like HTC does, you can. Like, they skin the entire operating system to look different.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
All of this stuff is. Yeah.
Did you see the thing I tweeted, which was the Rubik's Cube solving robot that basically was constructed out of Legos hooked to a Droid phone and nothing else? Like, the Droid phone takes a picture of the Rubik's Cube and then manipulates these Lego arms to solve the Rubik's Cube. And it's crazy. It freaked me out, because I'm like, your phone in your pocket, you, Brad, have a phone that on its own can solve a Rubik's Cube.
That's funny.
Just equip it with some Lego arms and it'll be fine. It's like, all right.
It's craziness. But yeah, back to the 1984 thing, just if I could quickly finish that. They showed a picture of 1984 or something looking like the movie, and they were saying, we don't want to go the route where one company controls the shots and calls the shots on how everything has to be and what the device has to look like. And, they didn't say it, but they showed that 1984 image, and the audience went nuts, because it's the thing that Apple fought against is, lockstep with the IBM way, and everyone has to follow the IBM way. But if you think about it today, like, if you want Flash, Apple says no. If you want a physical keyboard, Apple says no. Like, there are things that you just can't do. And I think it's one of those things that may put Apple right back to where they were in the 80s when Steve Jobs had to leave the company, or there was a lot of weird stuff that went down.
Anyway, Power PC days.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens, I'm not telling Apple to behave differently, but it's becoming clear what kind of company they are compared to a company like Google or like, some of these other open platforms. But that's basically it for the Google I/O conference. It was very exciting to watch some of this futuristic stuff, but none of this is like available today. So, you have to wait and see how it actually turns out. They also introduced Google TV. Sorry, real quick.
Well, yeah, that was like a big thing that you wanted to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, no.
What is Google TV?
I'm sorry. I'm just going to be super quick, because I'm planning on this being our banner image for this week's show. So it's like, oh, I didn't even mention it, but it's basically a way to integrate the internet and television in a smart way. And this is, some people think, a direct competitor to Apple TV, but Apple TV is really just iTunes on your TV.
Yeah, it's crap.
This is a way to try to get.
There's so many better solutions for that. Like I've talked about Boxy and just Xbox, like things like that. So cool.
Yeah.
So this is Google
throwing their hat in, and do they deliver? What's
Well, that's the thing. This is Google, and I'm more skeptical on this one because this is Google throwing their hat into a pretty crowded ring. Like you said, there's Boxy and all these different, T-versity and all these software solutions for this.
TiVo's Premiere,
right?
Like the new TiVo is trying this.
Yeah, basically, people can tell that there is content on the web that you'd like to watch on your TV. I mean, we all see that. But the problem is how to get it all on there. And to me, the issue is that it's controlled by so many different companies like Hulu, ABC, NBC, that anybody who tries to do this ends up, having to go through all this kind of crap. Oh, Netflix, of course, has a huge video library. But they have to go through all this crap to try to get as many providers on board as possible. And I think Google's probably going to have that same issue. But their advantage is that they own YouTube, and that was a big thing that they were showing off was something called YouTube Laid Back, which is actually an app that you would download for Google TV. So just to clarify this, there would be apps on Google TV. It can be on any device, just like Android. It's open. It's going to be on Logitech devices and Sony devices. It's going to be built into some Sony TVs, but you can get an app that's called YouTube Laid Back, where you just literally sit back on your couch and it rolls a stream of YouTube stuff that you might like, or you can customize it to be like your channel. I found that interesting. Certainly the most aggressive.
Yeah, I've wanted that for a while. Just in YouTube regular is there a way that I can just turn it on and have it just roll movies for me?
Yeah, it's gotten better. They have.
I remember when
button.
I remember when GameSpot used to do that, where like their video channel would just roll trailers and video features and stuff like that. I don't even know if they do that anymore. I love that kind of thing, like because I still miss just being able to leave something on and sort of veg out or just do something else while entertainment is brought to me.
Of course, this kind of assumes that the television is here to stay, and I guess it is. I mean, when you see such futuristic stuff, that's happening online, I almost feel like, well, maybe they shouldn't be pursuing television. But again, some of these things are the bridge to the future. You know what I mean? Like Conan O'Brien was saying recently in his excellent appearance at Google. I don't know if you actually saw that video.
No.
Oh, so good. But he was saying, maybe network TV would be totally gone. And then he sort of laughed to himself, wouldn't that be sweet,
Nice.
But, he's envisioning, down the line, maybe we're just going to consume it all this way. Anyway, Google's trying to get in on that. That's Google TV, but that'll wrap it up for our discussion about I.O. there.
Sweet. Go Google.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shut you up. It's like, now you will say nothing else.
No. I mean, I have nothing to contribute because I don't have internet.
Yeah, I know.
I am so far behind this curve. I'm nowhere near the cloud. The cloud has been silenced to me.
I know. You're going to have to get your hookup whenever you get to your new place.
Yeah, and I got to figure out what that's going to be. That's kind of exciting.
I know, because you're coming from FiOS, so I hope you don't have to downgrade.
No, well, I mean, I am planning on downgrading because I don't need all that speed because it's just me. I'm not sharing the connection with roommates. I'm not doing anything.
Right.
However, the idea did cross my mind to like maybe get something really incredible and ask people in the apartment building to subscribe to my Wi-Fi thing.
Nice.
Hey,
that's a good idea.
I will give you the password. Right. Give me the I'll give you the password if you give me $10 a month.
You know what?
And that's a great deal for them.
Yeah, it's like stealing Wi-Fi, but it's permitted. I don't even know what you would call that.
Yeah, illegal is what I think that's called.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's like stealing cable. I don't know.
I'm subletting incredible internet.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if there's even
this giant server.
I wonder if there's even laws in the books about that kind of stuff yet.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it being done before, and so I'm sure it's been addressed where people kind of get a T1 line or something like that and sell access to it locally. So they're like a private ISP, a local ISP. Because really, a lot of the ISPs we use are just, they're using Cisco technologies or something like that, and it's all just going, trickling upward directly into Al Gore's skull.
Exactly,
and he cools the environment with it.
Ding. I guess the only other things news-wise that I was fascinated with this week were the stuff about Foxconn. Did you see any of that?
None. and saw nothing at all.
I'll make these. I have 2 things remaining. I'll make them quick, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Okay, so Foxconn, which sounds like something from Metal Gear Solid, is actually the factory that produces iPads, iPods, and iPhones in China.
Oh.
And I don't want to make this an Apple bashing episode, because this is really an issue that
Do
affects...
Make it an Apple bashing episode. Go.
No, it's an issue that affects us as geeks, just in terms of everything that we play with and own and use, with this, some of these companies using just kind of very, almost like subhuman conditions, I would say,
right,
for their employees. And that's what happened with Foxconn. Is there have been so far like 6 or 7 suicide attempts, some of them successful, in this company. And so Foxconn has been forced to respond, and they've brought in therapists to talk to the people, and they've even brought in like Buddhist monks to like free the souls from purgatory, and all this craziness. And so people are curious, what is going on inside this company that all this is happening, that people think suicide is their only way out. And somebody got an undercover report. And so this week there was a Chinese report translated into English. Some of it's a little bit loose, but they make about $100 a month American. And they buy the Chinese knockoffs of iPads and iPods, and they sort of discuss with each other the benefits of different knockoffs, because they could never afford the real thing,
That's
and
crazy.
it was actually a pretty sad article. I saved this more toward the end because I didn't want to bring the whole thing down, but yeah, you read the one guy said his favorite hobby was to drop something, because when you drop something, you can bend down and pick it up, and it gives you a momentary break from standing. They're basically standing 8 hours a day.
Wow. Oh, well, I mean, I did that while I worked retail, but still.
Well, I guess that's true, and you didn't have to go to your happy place. Maybe I don't know, but
sometimes I did. I'd read a magazine or something. No solidarity whatsoever with these people.
Yeah,
I'm a terrible overweight American, just like, yes.
Yeah, I know what you're
I
dealing
understand children suffering.
My friend Ryan was a manager at National City, and he would he would like to enjoy the handicap stall in the bathroom, because it was like a little vacation, And I actually feel like he like texted me once. He's like, totally enjoying the handicap stall right now, enjoying every minute of it, or whatever,
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, yeah, when you work a hard job, like you do need those special like breaks for mental health. And for these people, like, part of that was just driving around on the cart that they use to deliver the hardware and pretending that it's a BMW, in their mind, like imagining that their life was better.
Sounds like things I used to do in high school.
I know.
It's very human, I guess what it is I'm saying. Like, that's people surviving in the strangest circumstances. What's terrible is that circumstance exists. And for a company that's tries to be as progressive as Apple, that they have anything to do with that, I imagine, like, Steve Jobs is, like, wetting himself right now. Like, just... I don't even think that he, like, knows that this was going on, or, like, that anybody else...
No.
Like, I'm sure that this is something that's heartbreaking for everybody.
Yeah, Kathy Lee Gifford's clothing line at one point, they discovered it was a sweatshop. I mean, this kind of stuff, like I said, if we in this country, like in the United States, want to have cheap things, somebody's got to make it, and somebody's got to not charge a lot for their labor. And unfortunately, China is full of people like that. Mm-hmm. The problem is then sometimes the companies push it and push it and push it to a point where they're really just they're slaves. I mean, they mentioned that they only break briefly to eat and sleep, and then they're back to standing and assembling parts. And it's like, next time I see the price point on a piece of technology, I'm going to think, like, how many people are getting stepped on and screwed for it to come down to a price that, a room full of nerds will clap at,
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I encourage people to read the article. They also make Android devices, so they're not, again, I don't want to make this an Apple thing. Although Apple, this comes at a very bad time, with all the Flash stuff lately, and the Apple ordering the police to kick down Jason Chen's door, and it's just like, we don't need Foxconn now to have another suicide,
It's crazy. It reminds me of something that I heard on Dig Nation. They were talking about eating healthy.
Yeah,
they were saying, well, it's hard to eat healthy because it's expensive, and he's like, it's not expensive to eat healthy. It's cheap to eat unhealthy. Like, you are paying what you should be paying when you buy from your farmer's market,
sure,
or from anywhere else. And I'm thinking about, like, man, I used to think it was a reasonable price for a computer to be $2,000.
Right.
You know, like,
yeah.
And that wasn't even like cutting edge, you know? But nowadays, you know, it's like it's upsetting when it's like 300 and everything else is going the opposite direction, you know? Cars are getting more expensive. Software itself is getting more expensive. But, you know, computer hardware and stuff, because it won't sell unless it's a certain price, you know? Right. I almost feel bad that I was so mad at the PlayStation 3 costing so much, but
yeah, it's crazy.
You know, like it's a give and take, but it's yeah, like I don't know, it's this consumer thing, and we want more than we deserve, and it's entitlement crap.
Well, I don't.
So I didn't mean for this show. I guess this is what happens whenever we do a late night show. Is like we're more
we start
introspective.
Screw the government. Screw Microsoft. It definitely makes me feel fortunate to not be under these circumstances, and I hope that Foxconn will come to their senses.
Well, the employees need to unionize. Like, whenever you have expendable workers, you know, like individually they're all expendable, then the only way they can survive and have any clout is if they unionize and say, look, you get rid of one of us, we're all walking out, and then you've damaged yourself. Like, but right now, they're all expendable. They all have to just take whatever they're given.
Yeah, and these are all hot button issues here at the end of our...
I know, like, what this is a geek show. Hey!
Yay! But, and speaking of geekiness, I do just want to real quick leave everybody with a quick movie review. I got to see the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus this week, which is the new Terry Gilliam film. It's the last performance of Heath Ledger. And so I really just read it as a curiosity. I'm not a massive Terry Gilliam fan. If you are, of course, you've probably already seen this, but it's interesting. It's a guy who can never really get a break when it comes to making films. If anyone's seen the documentary Lost in La Mancha, it's about him trying to make Don Quixote, or rather a movie called The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, but it just, at every turn, there's sandstorms, and the guy he hires to be Don Quixote has like prostate cancer and can't sit on a horse, and I mean, there's footage of the movie in this documentary, and it's like, oh my God, he gets screwed every turn. And it just doesn't seem like, I mean, he's so optimistic, but he always has bad luck with movies. And with Heath Ledger dying, I mean, it must have been like, oh man, does it always have to be this way? But because of the plot of this movie, which is like this sort of modern day traveling circus that has a magic mirror you can jump into and see your imagination, because of that plot, he's able to actually get away without Heath Ledger being there pretty well. And the way he does it is, when Heath Ledger travels through the mirror, he looks like Johnny Depp or Jude Law or Colin Farrell, depending on the point in the movie. And I thought that was actually a pretty good solution. Like I said, I think this is worth watching as a curiosity, just because of seeing how a director gets out of this nightmare scenario where your actor is actually, you know, unable to complete the movie.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, those are not bad actors, those other guys. So it's a pretty star-studded cast at the end of the day. Although Johnny Depp is the shortest, and they go progressively longer, and Colin Farrell with the longest portion. But yeah, it's basically looks like Monty Python come to life. You know, probably what they envisioned all those years ago, and then that crappy animation. Now with computer technology, he's got, you know, these really, you know, crazy imagination scenes going on with, you know, 8 million foot tall ladders and giant, you know, heads coming out of the ground. But it actually looks decent, you know.
Pretty cool. Well, I'll definitely give it a check, because even the preview, I was pretty amazed by it, and saw like, yeah, that totally makes sense for the premise that works, you know. So they're not pulling a crow on us here. They're actually having some interesting stuff happen. So that sounds cool. We've been at this for a while now.
Yes. So that is going to do it for this week's show. Thank you for listening. If you would like to send us an email, you may do so. Our email address is mail@growing-up-geek.com. You can follow us throughout the week on Twitter at GUGBrad or GUGRob. It's just one of those days
when you want to wake up. Wait.
Everybody sucks.
Yeah.